All right, thank you, Secretary. Good evening, everybody. This is the Town of New Canaan Town Council regular meeting, Wednesday, September 21st, 2022, 7:03 p.m. First item up on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, and we are going to have Boy Scout Troop 45 help us out with that. Come on up, guys. Oh, please rise.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, guys. Steve, you want to say anything? Any updates?
Yeah, sure. Why don't you guys just stand up here? Good evening, everybody. I'm Steve Proster. I'm the scout. Actually, I'm now the committee chair for Troop 45. We have a new scoutmaster, Keith Duggar. Tonight we have first class scout Aiden Proster and tenderfoot scout Jack DeLeafy with us here tonight. We're 17 scouts as of last year, growing. Actually, we have approaching 40 families now in scouting at St. A's. So it is a new program as of 2019. We've begun to get plugged into a lot of the different service projects around town. I know scouts helped take the holiday decorations down in town last year. We actually have helped repack a bunch of holiday decorations for this coming year. We're doing a lot at the Nature Center. They've been great partners with us over the past year, both for eco projects as well as for just using the facility along with the land trust. So really appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. Look out for scouts. They're selling popcorn, they're selling meal kits, they're selling Christmas trees and pumpkins and all kinds of things. But it's a great program. We're really happy to be part of New Canaan, and scouting is very helpful here. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
guys.
Thank you.
All right, Penny, you want to call the roll?
Do. Robin Bates Mason here. Rita Bacino here. Tom Butterworth,
Here.
Mark Tinsky,
Here.
Steve Carl,
Here.
Luke Kaufman,
Here.
Mike Morrow, Frankie Blake, Maria Oliver here, Kimberly Norton here, Lori Warman here, Christina Ross here, and I'm here. You're all here.
Thank you very much. All right, moving on, item number 2, minutes. Approval of minutes of the regular meeting held on July 20th, 2022. It's hard to believe. That's the last time we met. Last day of summer was today. Feels like fall. Everybody get a chance to read those minutes? Any deletions, corrections?
It's presented.
All right. So on to item number 3. Public comment. Members of the public are welcome to speak to the council on agenda topics scheduled for review and or vote. Speakers are requested to provide their name and street address. Comments may be limited to 2 to 3 minutes, subject to total number of speakers. Would anybody like to address the council on agenda item? Do we not need to vote on the minutes?
If they're not changed, they stand as presented.
Great. Unanimous.
Read your Roberts.
All right. Any public comments? Do we have anybody out from outside? Or?
Well, we had a number of people who signed up. I think many are here to speak maybe about a topic that isn't on. So,
Yeah, so we'd like to see the agenda. We've got a lot of stuff on. So.
is anybody here to speak to anything? The agenda tonight involves ARPA funds and the police bonding resolution. The town council rules, those are the 3 agenda topics. If anybody wants to speak to those items, let's
What was the intended?
leave cell towers.
Oh yeah, we will be talking about salt towers, and probably at least another month out. So another 1 or 2 months to go. But absolutely, we'll let them talk about that coming up.
Is there any way we can break the rules?
I mean, that's a standing rule, unfortunately. We'll just send that.
The town council.
Might be helpful as I was speaking with some individuals before the meeting. If people have suggestions as a different way to do things, we welcome those suggestions. And it's a product of research that all of us do and studies by consultants that we engage to help us. But we're not the final say, so if people have other suggestions, we would welcome hearing from them, so send them to us.
Yeah, and on the subject of cell towers, the town is attending a forum, that's what they're trying to put together. I think the selectmen talked about having, we'll have Kevin on later, we can ask him, but I think the selectmen talked about having some sort of public forum, whether it's through the League of Voters or through the town, so there will be a chance to voice, positives and negatives about cell towers going forward, so this is, we're here, we're gonna be here, we're gonna be talking about this for the next few months for sure, so.
See if Mr. Powell would like to talk to town council rules.
Absolutely.
Just make a comment, if anyone who had a prepared statement, you can also email anyone on town council. So I welcome, hearing from anyone, because I know that people feel like they want to get their thoughts out there. So, I mean, that's why I'm here. So please send them if you, traffic committee, stuff.
All right, this is Mike's,
Yes.
Good evening, members of the town council. My name is Joe Paulo. I live on Arrowhead Trail. And I understand on the agenda tonight are rules. So I'd like to speak about one rule. I read in looking at the rules of the town council that in the event of a tie, the tie-breaking vote is cast by the first selectman. Am I correct? That is what I'd like to speak about. The issue of the cell tower, which we're going to defer to another time, will come to you at some point. And it is conceivable that there could be a tie vote. It's going to be, I think, a very debated issue. When the housing 830G issue came up a few months ago, our first selectman elected to recuse himself from that proceeding. I don't fully understand his reasons, but I certainly respect them. Usually when somebody recuses themselves, it's for a reason of a bias or a perception of bias. In this case, Mr. Moynihan has filled the role of a one-man utility commission working directly with Homeland Towers, has been the only person with access to information about what's going on, and much of it is confused. And there'll be a number of things that you hear as we go forward that will, I believe, disqualify him from being in the role of casting a tie-breaking vote as an independent party on an issue that he has been the #1 advocate and proponent for. So I'm calling upon Mr. Moynihan tonight to recuse himself early in the process, just as he did with the 830G situation, and that the good counsel of the town council members would encourage him to do so, because he's clearly not an independent voter. He's clearly biased on that subject. If I may add one more fact, at a recent Board of Selectmen meeting on August 9th, I provided to the selectmen a 60-page report of information that we collected on cell towers, which is part of the meeting minutes for August 9th. So if you go to the town website on the August 9th attachment, you can get this very nice report and save yourself a lot of time and work. And I and the members of my team will be happy to come back and speak with you about that. So I want to close that on your agenda topic of time rules. The first selectman should recuse himself from the potential of having to give a tie-breaking vote to the town council sometime in the near future, just as he did for the affordable housing project. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you, sir.
Could you state your name for the record?
I did. Joe Paulo, Arrowhead Trail.
Is there anybody online that would like to speak to the agenda items this evening? So please raise your hand. Okay, see none.
All right, moving on. Let's see, item number 4, first selectman comments. Kevin, you're out there. Update from the first selectman. Welcome. Oh,
You're muted, Kevin. No, Kevin, hang on, you're muted. Let me see if I can ask you to.
just in reference to where that document is, on our iPad, we don't see another file.
No, it's on the town website.
Oh, the town website.
And if you, Tucker, can it be sent to them?
It's in the minutes. That's the thing.
Kevin, can you hear us now?
I can hear you now, but I'll start over. I didn't realize I was muted. Good evening. I'm in the building. I'm actually not coming to your meeting room because I came down with something overnight. I feel rather under the weather, but I tested negative for COVID this afternoon, so I'll test every day to see what's going on. But so I'll give a brief update. The same update basically they gave to the Board of Finance last week. Starting with COVID, hopefully most of you, all of you received, like obviously you received the email that was sent out by Jen Allison, the Director of Health, last Thursday. It's the first time in several months that we've sent an email to everyone in town, because the health department is standing up a series of clinics to administer third doses, or fourth doses in some cases, of the new new vaccines of various kinds for various eligible categories. So the details of that are in the email. I think we're going to send another email this Thursday, so the message gets out there. This will go on for weeks. We did 500 teachers and students today at the high school. We do 300 tomorrow at Irwin. Next week again, Thursday. And but there's different vaccines for different age groups, as you know. And so I just want to mention that. Capital projects. Eversource is, as you know, finishing up downtown. They finished Grove and Pine and Upper Elm Street. We're going to try to get Elm Street repaved by the end of October if we can, since there's only about 6 connections there on Elm Street, Upper Elm Street. We're working with Eversource to get other connections done in downtown so we can get to repaving some of the other roads early next spring. And they will be coming into Waveney Park hopefully in the next few weeks to bring gas to, as I said before, to Lapham Center, Waveney House, surprisingly, the pool and the paddle tennis courts. And as you know, we're going to do CHP at Lapham Center, which is going to power not only Lapham Center, but also the field lights. On the score, we issued a press release the other day. Our new field lights are have been installed at Dunning, and I encourage everyone to see the new field lights. It's pretty exciting. What we'll see with the first game Friday night at home. And as Tiger has announced, Aquarian is going to change their order of doing this 36-inch pipe across New Canaan because the state is shutting down Aquarian from work in 106 over in Wilton for the season. So Lakeview Avenue will be under construction soon, and then we'll go through the cemetery and I believe the street in front of East School. So that's all going to be more construction work for a 36-inch water pipe for Aquarium. The Playhouse is moving forward. As you see, if you've been downtown, the outside work is underway. We haven't signed the lease yet, but the Cinema Lab is doing well with their fundraising and having weekly meetings now on the renovation plan. So that's moving forward nicely. We've already touched upon the West Cell Tower. Obviously, Homeland Towers has been very busy, and they have been trying to prepare a revised site plan with 2 options. We had never looked at the other end of the 47 acres, which is at the end of Llewellyn, which is a cul-de-sac. So when I asked Ray Brigatti with Homeland Towers whether that location would work, the carriers have said it would work, but we're still trying to decide how we bring forward 2 alternatives. So that will be coming back in October. You know, the P&Z is the body under the zoning regulations that we adopted in 2018 that has to issue a special permit for a cell tower on town property. So the town council has to approve a lease once we know we have a location that's been decided on. The PD building is on your agenda, so I won't discuss that. I want to just bring you up to date on the very successful rollout of the New Canaan Urgent Assessment Program with Silver Hill Hospital. We had a meeting with them yesterday, as we do every month now. And since July 11th, when the program started, there's been 22 cases, mostly adolescents, no seniors, surprisingly, a few middle-aged persons, but the people who are participating in the schools are especially excited about this program, that it gives people the opportunity to get immediate assessments for any emotional or behavioral issues. And I think you all know about that program by now. 20 Elm is moving forward. We had a monthly meeting this afternoon over 220 Elm. The superintendent's renovation plan will go out to bid hopefully in October. And as I think I mentioned before, the Board of Ed will stay in 39 Locust through June, and then the PD will move over after renovations to 39 Locust. A minor amount of renovations will be done to 39 Locust for the police to occupy it for 2 years. We haven't signed the lease yet for 39 Locust for the police, but we are ready to once we know we have a project, and we're getting closer to a project as you authorize more funds tonight. So I think that's all I have. I'd be happy to answer questions, but.
Thank you, Kevin. Questions?
Hi, Kevin. I don't think the letters know. I had asked you all last week. A quick question about the proposed cell tower. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can,
Thanks.
especially when you speak into the mic.
Okay. So just from what you said, it's one of two locations on the west side. It would be either the original location behind West School or closer to the Welland Drive. It would be one or the other, correct? Not
Yes, the Holman Towers went back and identified a way to push the tower further back from West School, so it'd be 1,000 feet from the school. That obviously changes the topography, and Llewellyn is significantly lower, like 50 feet lower. So they require taller towers, and that's where P&Z, in either case, it'll be, a tower will be in the woods, where probably no one, including neighbors, will not see the tower. I don't believe you'd be able to see it from West School, so.
But it would still be on town property, correct? This one would not be on private property? Either.
Yeah, the town owns 47 acres. The first 6 of the acres on Ponus Ridge is the school, and the other 47, the balance of the 47 is town property. So it's awfully hard. You know, we did, as I think I said before, we talked to Country School, we talked to Winter Club, we talked to Camp. I didn't talk to Camp Playland, but Holman Towers did. We talked to the Land Trust for other institutional properties, and in the absence of another property, I'm not aware of any residential owner that has more than 4 acres that would be interested in hosting a tower. But that's the way this process works too, by the way, especially when it gets to the siting council. If someone pops up and says, I'll take the tower in a location that works for the carriers, the siting council will consider that. So, but again, we don't have an alternative. And actually, when you have 47 acres in a location where it's needed, people like Country School say, why are you asking us? You have 47 acres.
But and just one further clarification, that if it went on the closer to Llewellyn, it would be 150 feet higher, is that correct?
Not 150 feet higher. Towers are never more than like 180, but it would probably have to be 175 feet.
Okay.
Again, in the woods, and we don't have a tower in town that's 175 feet tall. Towers are very commonly 180 feet tall. The one over on, the Armory site is, I'm not sure that's New Canaan property. The state property it's 140 foot tall, which is the tallest tower we have in town.
That's good to know. Thank you. Feel better.
Thank you. Thank you.
Kevin, there's a few people in the audience that have asked about the cell towers, and actually came to the meeting. Just give us the sort of a cadence of meetings that this would have to go through, where they'll have a chance to weigh in. So it's obviously it's got to go. It has to go to planning and zoning first, or just walk us through how that would work.
Well, You know, there has to be an 824, which means that any project on town property has to go to P and Z regardless. But in this case, the regulations they adopted in 2018 requires a special permit, which requires Homeland Towers to go for a special permit for a tower. So that process takes a couple months at least. And there'll be public hearings on that. And then the town council will have a public hearing but again, this is always a multi-month process. No, nothing gets done in 2 weeks or 2 months. And we started it in June or whenever it was at the Board of Selectmen because we had been asked by Verizon to consider a lease with Homeland Towers that is already funded by Verizon. I mean, that was new news. Verizon hasn't invested in New Canaan in 5 years. And for them to come forward as they have in Wilton with a funded tower is a big deal. So, they have, and again, I attribute this to COVID because they used to say we're only focusing on 5G and New York City. They're not focusing on New York City right now. And so I think the suburbs are benefiting from COVID in that sense that they realize they have to improve cell service in locations where they say they have self-service, but we know different carriers have big gaps in town and we have to remedy that. So.
Mr. Chairman, will the chair reconsider having public comment since the first selectman has put the cell tower on the agenda along with the town council member? There's just a few comments that should be made.
So it's not on our agenda, and this is the first selectmen's update, so that's on our agenda every single time, so every single time. So when we talk about agenda topics, there are individual topics that we talk about, so, and the reason that I mentioned this a couple times is to try to paint a picture of where we are here. So we're not even at the starting line of shooting a gun. So we are so early in this process. We don't know whether there'll be a proposal coming to us or not. That's where we are.
The point that I'd like you to hear is one that actually discusses a violation of town ordinance regarding the process. And it's the process that we want to talk about, not the actual stick in the ground. So would you allow a discussion on the process relating to town law, to town regulations? Chapter 12.
We can't, it's not on our agenda. We can't bring it up. That's the problem. So I mean, if we want to discuss this, we'll put it on our agenda for next week. We'll do that. Thank you. Kim.
Yeah, hi Kevin. I know there was some talk about there being a public forum to learn about, what you're proposing and discuss different technologies. And things
Yeah,
like that.
I think, we have a whole new generation of people in New Canaan since we did public forums back in 2011 and 2012. We educated a lot of residents about the need for cell service. But there's people who are new to New Canaan that have to understand to be a modern town, you need for public safety and the safety of our residents, let alone being a modern town commerce wise.
I wasn't able to finish my question, Kevin. Is there any progress made on a date for a public information session? Discuss that. And I think Steve just mentioned it, right? That we were gonna have.
We're happy to have a public information session. Sure. We just haven't gotten, we need Homeland Towers to complete their work they've been working on. So we can't talk about things in the abstract. We can talk about things in the abstract, but it wouldn't be as productive. So.
Is that report available publicly? I'm one of those ignorant new people that moved to town, so I would love to be educated on it. Is that report public?
Yeah.
Can I go
Yes,
on the
if the
microphone?
report, someone in the audience asked if the report has been made public. They just moved to Canaan, the report that you just referenced.
I'm sorry, I can't, for some reason, I can't hear you, Kim.
Kevin, there's a question about, is the report that you've referenced on the town website?
The report from from Homeland Towers?
Yes.
Yes, so in 2015, we issued a RFP for a partner and we had like 6 responses for companies that would help us remedy our self-service problem. Homeland Towers was selected from that RFP. And in August of 2016, I think I sent you the Board of Selectmen meeting where Tom Teslick laid out the plan. Nothing's changed in terms of having macro sites to have your primary coverage. Some of the people are now focusing on 5G, which by the way, 5G is not going to get to New Canaan anytime soon. And things that relate to 5G are just not on the table yet. You know, this town, like, was it Dallas? I think Dallas is having 10,000 5G antennas installed around town. And people are raising concerns about the proximity of those to people's houses and stuff. But we're not getting anywhere near 5G in McKinnon. There are 7 or so Verizon small cells, which are similar to 5G, but they're not 5G.
I have 5G on my phone right now.
With T-Mobile?
No, AT&T.
Well,
I have it with Verizon on my phone.
Okay, we're back. Remember, we're not. This
So
is
we
not
also have the same time, like, it sounds like,
Yeah, it's on the agenda.
We can wrap this up, Christina, with one last, we're not going.
Great.
Steve, I'd like to address Joe, though, in terms of, I was required to recuse myself on the 751 Elm Street, Weed Street project because I live within 100 feet of the property, and I'm statutorily aggrieved, so I didn't have a choice. The town attorney advised me to recuse myself. That doesn't mean I'll recuse myself from the other 830G proposals. Should it come to a vote that I have to act on, and also my tie-breaking vote for the town council and the Board of Finance is in our charter. It's not a rule. It may be a rule also, but it's in the town charter. I don't anticipate we're going to tie votes on this issue. So
I move that we consider getting into the agenda, to bring it to a vote, only because this has become part of the. To add the cell towers.
I'll second that.
Can I just make a quick comment? It might have occurred to people that we're looking to run our meetings efficiently, and sure that is an issue, but that's not the key issue. The key issue with publishing an agenda in advance is so public people that are interested in particular agenda items, like just debating a policy issue, will know whether to come to the meeting or not. And if we publish agenda with no cell phones, for all we know, people out there that stay home because it wasn't on the agenda, we need to respect them as well. We can't just wing it because there are people in the public that rely on our disclosures to know what's going to happen in a meeting. That's why we have the rule, we stuck to that rule since the beginning of time. So I would not support adding something like this to an agenda as important as it is. I mean, we will set a course. When we start doing this, and some of you who are new haven't been through a cell tower proposal. Those of us that have been around a while know that this isn't a 1 night, 2 night, 3 night, 4 night deal. This is a long haul for us, especially if it's on town property. That'll be 4-hour meetings, night after night for a while. So why start having a discussion about something we have no idea about any of the details whatsoever? It makes absolutely no sense.
Taken public comments about items not on the agenda before,
Only because someone was out of order.
but we didn't.
Well, they proposed that they were gonna say something that was on the agenda, they got up to the mic and they disregarded rule. That's the only time we've done that. And I agree that we should have, anytime the public comes to these meetings, we should have them up, but we have to respect, as Tom said, if it's not on the agenda, there's 5 people here tonight, there's probably 55 people out there that would have come tonight if they knew we were gonna talk about it.
or
Probably more.
it's a hot topic. And I agree with you, Steve. I think it should be the right platform. And everyone's excited to have the conversation, but I think we should offer it to.
And there will be, as I said, there's plans in the making right now to try to have some townwide, either legal women voters open house or a town event. And, it's being worked on. That's all I can say. So,
Can we move on to?
well, there's a motion on
Motion on the table.
There's a motion on the floor, so we have to vote. Those, all in favor of the motion on the floor to add this to the agenda, add cell tower dispatch to the agenda, raise their hand.
I'm gonna need to write this down. So Kim, Mark, Christina,
Opposed?
Hillary, Robin, Tom, Steve, Maria, thank you.
And it's not that we don't want to talk about it, we want to talk about it. We're going to talk about it until there won't be anybody left in this room by the time we're talking about it, so. We will be talking about it at NOS, I promise you that, but we're not gonna talk about it now.
Can I just add, I said no because I want to read. Like, I feel like I'm from it to speak with like.
Sounds to us.
I agree.
There's no harm in public.
As long as
We don't invite a public comment. It's just a public comment.
Can I say a question? Is it possible for a public comment without discussion?
There's no discussion of public comment. They just speak and that's it.
What I'm saying. The motion is put it on the agenda.
Right.
I guess what I'm saying is, I personally also don't see a harm in just out, like that's not, but I don't think we're prepared for us to have any discussion on the topic. So I guess if it were me and we were like parsing it out and just allowing people to give their comment, I would be okay with that, but I'm not prepared to discuss it. I guess that would be my point.
I don't think public comment requires us to discuss it. It just says that we're listening. It's a one-way situation, so that's not included.
I guess that was my question on the agenda. Must be that's my only question.
Alright, moving on. Item number 5, American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA appropriations. Review and vote to approve the board of selectmen and board of finance recommendations for appropriate follows. Information and technology, cybersecurity, tree planting, both parks, VFWs, and YMCA. So, Mark, you want to take
Yeah, well, obviously, these 4 items have gone through the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and our committee. Approved unanimously by the committee. We have these 4 items. I suggest, given the speed things along, there probably won't be as many questions about the VFW. Discussed that at our prior meeting. We have Margaret, correct?
She is trying, she's in Portugal, but we have Mark and Russ.
We have Mark and Russ who are going to help. Mark's going to be able to talk about CHP and not so we'll have him up and Russ can talk about the shelter and why YMCA is a great place for it. Then Tiger hopefully is, if you have any questions about the tree planting that we approved. And Tucker again, is Chris on the line and we can talk about the cybersecurity. Any questions? Or?
Chris was going to try, he was having a conflict this evening as well, but
Okay, so since Mark and Russ are here, I hopefully we can start with the YMCA.
Yeah,
and then
well, I
we'll-
think, well, I guess if Chris joins us, we can talk about cybersecurity, but that was pretty straightforward. Everybody got a chance to watch the video. Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and the ARPA committee have all approved that cybersecurity measure. One of the points that I thought was interesting was about the cybersecurity insurance policy was needed. And that's one of the reasons why we're updated is, and I think one of the comments that was made was so many other towns and cities along the way are using that ARPA, some of that ARPA money for cybersecurity. And given what's going on out there today, there's nothing more important than our stuff lockdown. So I think that was a pretty straightforward move. You know, if Chris doesn't show up, we can talk about it, but I think everybody got a chance to watch that. So
Mark, do you want to just take that one since I've got it up on the screen? Just trying to put things on as you go.
can you, you need an eye
You
chart
all
for us
have it
to
on
do
your
that.
tablets.
That font is like,
Yeah.
so you pull that up.
250,000.
Oh, you want us to read the numbers then?
No. Just if there's any, if anybody wanted to see the actual proposal.
Yeah, that's this.
Yeah.
The security allowance.
I guess the one thing I'll say about the cybersecurity the question that I had was, you know, why, if this is an ongoing expense, why is ARPA the right place for it? Why not do a special appropriation obviously, that was a question that was Chris answered for me, and hopefully we can get Chris, you can answer that question. Outside of that, obviously, I agree with Steve that it's something the town has to be very diligent with, and is a no-brainer. I questioned early on whether or not this was the right means for it, but I got a pretty good answer from Chris.
Hey, Mark, I can address that if you want me to.
Kevin, thank you.
So there's two reasons. One, we started seeing that other towns and cities around the country are spending money on cybersecurity. And I'm sorry, ARPA funds on cybersecurity. And then secondly, we just had a new insurance policy required to be issued on cybersecurity with stringent additional requirements. And we didn't plan on them. They're expensive. They will be continuing to some extent, but between those two factors coming into play, we have to spend the money. There's no choice, because for us to get our cyber risk insurance, we have to comply with certain requirements. And again, ARPA funds are being used around the country. So that's
you're
it.
suggesting there's a sense of urgency that wouldn't be conducive to the normal budgeting process?
Well, we could always do a special appropriation, but
That would be quite accurate. Anyway, I'm just wondering if that was your point, that it's urgent.
it's required that we spend the money. The choice to use ARPA funds is because it's become an eligible common use of ARPA funds around the country. We take our lead somewhat by what people are doing with ARPA funds, so.
You all were sent this a while ago with all the documents. An email? Yeah. So, no, it would have been, Mark would have sent it. Basically, the request is looking for 2 next generation firewalls at approximately $150,000. Rubric data retention appliance, 50,000. Through cybersecurity training for all network users, 13,000. EDN testing, approximately 20,000. And then a EDR, endpoint detection and response server, which is 17,000. So the total request was for 250,000.
What date was the email?
I can't tell you right now.
Can you forward that to everybody on front council?
I will, but I think the committee, I think you all received it, but
I didn't think I see it here, Mark, but when I clicked on it, it's number 8.
Yeah, I forwarded it to the committee. I would, or I don't even know if I had it, but yeah, I would assume that would. It's not.
All right, so what I would suggest is that we move on to the next item, and maybe it's late lines circulated, and we'll.
I can send it now.
And we'll agree before we vote. All right, second item was, what you want to do, you want to do these in order of tree planting. We'll go with this. So tree planting, you've got Tiger on the line. Welcome, Tiger. A couple of things that, because we just we don't need to hear the whole presentation because we've all watched it. One of the things that struck me about the 200,000 was we're going to split it $100,000 on town roads, $100,000 in our parks. South Avenue, obviously, is under this REVE project. South Avenue to Bank Street and then up through Wavening. And a couple of good takeaways. The beautification needs helping out. And also you're consulting with state arborists and the tree warden consultant. So maybe you can just fill us in on the holes there.
Well, you did a very good job. I don't know if there are many holes. The only thing that we are trying to split it 100 and 100, right? 100 on the roads, 100 on the parks. I would like a little flexibility in case the roads go over or under, or the parks go over and under, so that I'm not 100 and 100. The relief project right now, while I estimated it around 100,000, we're thinking it might come in just a little bit more based upon our initial research. And if need be, I have some monies in my existing tree budget that I can augment it with, but the 100 is a little bit tough. But we are working forward. The Beautification League has done their analysis on the entirety of South Avenue as to where we have holes between Cherry and Bank and where we need trees from Bank to Waveney, since that's pretty much a wide open palette. We'll have a meeting the end of this week to discuss that, and then we'll bring a proposal forward to the state arborist and then the state maintenance garage, since we'll need an encroachment permit. And then areas inside the parks. We just met with members of a local church organization that will be putting some 30 trees, some in Saks, some in Talmadge Hill, some at Lapham parking lot or Lapham Community Center. So that's a nice add, but we have areas where we would like to see additional trees in Waveney, in Mead, in Irwin. And then when we're looking at a substantial tree fall, like we're having to take down the very large oak at the base of the sledding hill at the pond, we'll be looking at, at that point in time, trying to replace that. The Conservancy is helping us in that situation, but we have other areas where substantial trees might fall, and we want to put in a larger replacement. So I think these funds are well needed and will be well used. Our parks were incredibly used during COVID, and I think it's a great thing to do. They've been, they were the go-to place for Fairfield County, and I think this would be a nice addition.
Thanks, Tiger.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Tiger, just have a comment. Sounds like a great project to put the trees in town. I guess I just wonder, in terms of the trees that are going to go on South Avenue, given the storms that we have in town, I'm sure you're running this by experts in the field, but when they look at like the deep root system of a tree, are they going to be cognizant of that issue? It is South Avenue is a thoroughfare for most of the town. The police department's there, schoolhouse apartments there. In other words, that we don't have trees that are falling over in storms, blocking the road when they get bigger and all that stuff. So that's just something that I just wanted to, to bring up.
Well, the tree adage is the right tree in the right place, right? So we're looking at putting the correct tree underneath the power line and the proper tree, a street tree across the street. As far as trees toppling, and we are substantially canopied throughout the town. But one area where we're lacking is roadside trees along South Avenue. I think it would be it's in our best interest to make that, since it's our main gateway into town, is to reestablish those trees. And again, like I said, it's the right tree in the right place, and to make sure that then they're properly maintained. But if we put the right tree in the right place, they're easy to maintain at that point in time. They don't necessarily get chopped up with tree pruning around wires and things of that nature.
Tiger, one of the things that was brought up and maybe touch on is the relationship or the reaching out to the neighbors, the property owners along the way. They're going to weigh in on trees that are planted in front of their property, so, right? You'll contact them.
Sure. Just like any other project that would affect someone's frontage, I drink, I don't know, hundreds of cups of coffee with people every time we propose a sidewalk extension, because it's right in front of their house or directly across the street. So the exact same thing will happen. Once we have a plan in place, then we'll start visiting it, shopping it, so to speak, to each neighbor to make sure that they're aware of it, they're on board, they understand it. And while it is state right away, or in other locations, town right away, we want them to be satisfied, because the largest thing that they're looking at is their property value, and their curb appeal. And we feel that, these trees will definitely enhance their curb appeal. We're not necessarily trying to screen anyone's house from the roadway and things of that nature. But again, we believe that, South Avenue is a huge gateway. We'd like to kind of enhance that gateway. And then we feel secondarily, it'll give a little bit more of a boost to curb appeal for the adjacent property owner.
Do you have a mechanism that people can add to the planting as they want to in front of their residents, like augment the the size of the planting or something? Is there anything in the way?
If they so wanted to, yeah, to upgrade the caliper, so to speak, we could certainly look at a special project account to allow them to upsize a certain tree that's in front of their property from, say, a 3-inch caliber to 5-inch caliber, or what have you. We have no issue with that. If someone wanted to help, participate, that would be fantastic.
And
Tucker, this is planted in the greenway between the road and the sidewalk, correct?
Yes, the right of way in essence ends at the back of the sidewalk. So our purview or our workable areas from back of sidewalk to back of sidewalk on both sides of the street, specifically on South Avenue. Other areas of town, our right of way is approximately 50 feet, and it varies. The road varies within it, but a good marker is stone walls, fences, things of that nature. Kind of gives you an idea of exactly the extent of our right of way and our purview.
So then how do we prevent as a tree grows, the root heave that then pushes up sidewalks? Because those are heavily utilized downtown.
The exact same thing happens. It's the right tree in the right place, right? So, the tree is chosen not only for its beauty and its character, but also for how it grows, right? So we've done a very similar thing on Elm Street. The trees on Elm Street just got a little bit beyond their workable size, but the majority of them, if you see their root structure is quite low and doesn't disturb the sidewalk, we would be looking for the exact same type of tree, tree growth, whereby we wouldn't run into that situation.
Good, thank you.
any other questions? Tiger? Or-
It's not really a question, I just, not to be Debbie Downer, but I just feel like this doesn't fall under ARPA in my, and I'm sorry, that's it, but all the other things are like services, health, things that impact a lot of people. This was so specific, it almost seems like something that could be funded through our regular expenses. I love trees.
Well, what the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. And what you'd like to see with ARPA is something that will then enhance the community for years to come. I can't think of another way to do it. We've been trying for a number of years to increase our tree budget and put a capital line item for tree placement, tree installation. We had one, 5-7 years ago. I'm sorry, I'm spacing on the time. It was $20,000, and it came into the budget in 1 year and left the next, and never to return. So while our tree budget is around $500,000 per annum, that is substantially skewed towards removal, to the tune of around 95%. The other remaining 5% is tree placement and tree pruning, probably with a thought of 4% towards tree pruning and 1% towards tree planting. So without this shot in the arm, I don't think we're necessarily going to get there. And in the end, it was a project that was established 20 years ago during a previous administration, and they only got halfway through on privately donated funds, and then we stopped at Bank Street. I think it's I think it would be a nice thing to do, and then we will be able to see that spending throughout the years going forward as the trees mature.
Thanks, Frank. Any other comments, questions? I'm assuming because we talked about this under the first item, but this is something that other towns have done tree planting initiatives under ARPA. Are you aware of that? Have you heard of anybody else using that money for that?
I have not, no, but I also haven't actually asked any of my colleagues what they're doing with their ARPA money. To be quite honest, I haven't reached out to them and said, "Oh, what are you doing with your allotment?" That hasn't been a topic of discussion for any directors across the state.
I mean, to Maria's point about it's not really ARPA. I mean, the other side of the argument might be that it's in terms of beautification of town. There's no street that gets more traffic than the corridor coming off South Avenue. That is the main corridor to Camden. So, I mean, as long as it's in a beautification of that corridor, and, you know, it does, if you think about mental health, you think about walking and the amount of people that were out walking up and down that street during COVID, I could see a correlation, but it is one of those. World.
I do respect your opinion, because if it's something that we're moving from the budget to save money, now we have money that was given to us. I can see where it's coming from, and I certainly appreciate your.
But I'd say it's also for the parks, and for everything that was used in the park, and coming forward and not to do with this, but talk about tree cutting and the ash, possibly beech trees, that are gonna have to come down. We have an opportunity to plant trees. I think we should take it, because I think going forward, we're gonna see a lot of trees, other trees that probably are gonna have to come down.
Well, it's doubly after this really bad drought that we've had. I don't know whether anybody's driven down the road and waited for that access road. And how many times have we all driven down there? Right now, the foliage and the undergrowth in that area is completely gone. There's nothing there. I'm worried about the number of trees that we probably lost at this time. It's significant. Those dead trees all over town. So it is probably a good time to start replanting stuff. Did you have a point?
No, I wanted to just point out that the parks were something that were early identified as they were used so heavily during COVID. And those were one area that our funds were definitely appropriate for use. I am getting some requests, if people can speak right into the microphone. Some are harder to hear than others, so if you're going to speak, I'd ask them to speak right to the microphone. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, moving on. Next item. The VFW, obviously, this is one of the, for $15,000, it's got more air than any of the items, so I think that's a pretty big cost. That was the biggest comment on that. All right, and then the last one, all right, Mark, back to you. We'll call our guest here.
We do have Chris on the line. If you wanted to jump to that, Chris was able to join. If you had any additional questions on the cybersecurity.
Sure, I mean, if he's good enough to jump on, let's get Chris for 2 minutes here. Chris, can you hear us?
Yep, they are.
Chris, just in a nutshell, can you give us like the 30,000 foot speech on the cybersecurity? What is it actually going to go toward?
Yeah, the reason why we're coming to you for the ARPA is there's a lot of changes that are being made for, not obviously you guys all know, not just because of the cybersecurity efforts to thwart off all this stuff, but our insurance costs more if we don't keep up with the changes, or if we haven't. We have right now, but they're putting in so many different, what I call them unfunded mandates, that it's like a checklist. You know, do you do this? Are you doing that? When are you going to get to that? And it comes down to that in synergy with the school system as well, because some of the money we want to spend on upgrading the firewalls so that we upgrade and have redundancy with them and they with us. And then it also comes to penetration testing inside that now we have to have done annually instead of semi-annually. I mean, once every couple of years. And it's straight down to some of the security we're looking for through this funding is AI control, which is brand new to it. And it's going to lessen the cost later on in life for us. But at the same time, it's going to secure us even more than we could ever believe. And we have actually the test box in place that they were gracious enough to let us use for about 90 days to see if we want to go forward with it. But it's impressive what this stuff can do. To wait a year through the budget would put us behind. So that's the reason why I went and said, if it's possible. I did reach out. I did talk to others in the field in the state of Connecticut and in all over the states. They are using their ARPA funds for the technology security sector. And they're improving their infrastructure and everything else with it.
Great, thank you. Question for Chris while we have him. Right? All right,
When you say, it includes the Board of Ed, I'm assuming it means all the students as well, or with that security protection?
No, that's an inside portion that they control. This is all internet based. So anything that they go through the actual WAN, the wide area network, the idea would be to have conjoined firewall and filtering and monitoring. So actually, yes, it would, because their side of the firewall would do that as well. The side that we're going to purchase, we'd like to purchase, would do that as well. And what it does is you build 2 in 1 so that we have redundancy built into both locations, and that they're set up to make sure they stay clean on both sides, and we do as well. Right now they have a single point of failure. This would give them redundancy. We would have redundancy already, but we actually would remove one device and filter through theirs as well. So the answer is yes, in the short of it. Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah.
any more questions for Chris? All right, thanks, Chris. Thanks for coming out. Appreciate it.
All right. Sorry about that. You guys have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, back to item number D, YMCA Emergency Shelter, public-private partnership. And we have Margaret out there.
Margaret is having a difficult time and she's in Portugal
Oh, that's right.
on vacation, but we have Russ and Mark here.
Yeah, so just to recap, you've all watched the video, but the McKeon YMCA, they are proposing a $500,000 CHP Black Start program as an energy project. That was allowed a 5-year payback, totaling $1.82 million. Lighting, building control, station, steam control, bus stage for that. And there is several partnerships. I guess there's a, they can talk about this, but Margaret mentioned that 80% of the members are back from COVID. They're still going back after COVID. So maybe we can have both Mark and Russ come up to the mics and we'll just ask them any other questions about paybacks and setup, et cetera. So we're noting that the alerts.
I'll sit here because there's a microphone. It's not that I don't like it.
Good evening, hear me?
Yes.
So I'm Mark Robbins, MHO Development Community Consultant. I'm actually here with my cell phone and I have Margaret Riley, Executive Director of Canaan YMCA, on the phone. She's in Portugal. She's in a hotel lobby that shut off their internet service, so she's not able to get on. So I'm going to try to put up the volume on the speaker here, and hopefully you can hear her. She can at least address questions or be aware of that. Margaret, can you hear? Are you there?
Can I be heard? Can everybody in the room hear me?
Okay.
Gotcha, Margaret. Thank you
I think
so much,
it's
Margaret.
working.
That's dedication.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I'm so sorry to have to appear this way this evening. This is not what I planned. This is bad timing. I just want to say that I think that this is has the potential to be a very exciting use of ARPA funds for both the town and the YMCA. As you know, we're requesting $500,000 in order to support an energy project, which will include the purchase and installation of units. I know that many of you are familiar with those because the town has used them in so many of its own projects. With those units, the Y can produce its own electricity using natural gas and also recapture the thermal output from those units to help us keep our facilities. In so doing, we will save a significant amount in operating expenses, which will enable us to help to recover after COVID. As was mentioned, the Y is at approximately 80% of its membership revenue from pre-COVID. And while our membership has dropped a little bit, our operating expenses have only increased with inflation and energy costs and wage increases. So this will be a significant assistance to us as a capital project with a very quick payback. Additionally, if the town supports our application for ARPA funds, we will be able to purchase DHT units that have a black start capability, which means that the Y will have ready and usable generators whenever the power in town might go out, which means that the town will acquire the infrastructure necessary so that the Y can serve as a reliable emergency shelter whenever needed. So I think this can be a really exciting use of ARPA funds and allow both the Y and the town to benefit significantly. As we started to mention, there are, in addition to the $500,000 that we're seeking here, we will make an application for Inflation Relief Act funds. It's a brand new law, as many of you know, so that might be a few years out, but based on the research that MHR has done, it seems that we might be able to get as much as 30% of the project cost covered by federal funds. So the timing is really perfect for us to be moving forward on this project.
Great, thank you, Margaret. Mark, you want to just comment on the way this system is going to work, I guess? I mean, there was some questions in the last presentation. Can you just run through quickly for us, how does the CHP and Blackstar actually work? There was concern about in the event that we had a power outage, a significant power outage, there's switches that have to be thrown so that you become an independent source there at the line. Can you touch base on some of that stuff?
Right, so, and Margaret came through super clear, Margaret, just so you know, so everyone was able to hear you and hopefully you them very well. So to give you a little detail on the actual mechanics of the equipment. So incidentally, the building we're in here right now is actually CHP system is on and commissioned and operating, providing the baseload electric power and thermal heat energy for the building right now that we're in the town hall. So that's a good sort of proof of concept for us. So the YMCA was exploring installing a CHP system or systems to provide baseload electric and thermal energy, not necessarily with the Black Start feature. And in connection with being able to provide a town shelter, they're basically installing this additional circuitry and controls and somewhat upsizing the equipment to provide all of the necessary power for a shelter for the building to operate in island mode, as they call it, as opposed to being synchronous with the grid, whereby periodically drawing from the grid for peaks and surges in their power. So what happens, just like a home generator, you have a transfer switch, and if you have a more sophisticated generator, it happens automatically. But what it does is it disconnects the building from the grid so that your home generator, if you will, doesn't feed the grid, and people, linemen working on the power lines might get shocked. So it creates a distinct and with redundancy disconnection from the grid. And then it powers up specifically identified circuits. And this generator will, acting in as a generator, if you will provide both electrical and thermal heat energy for the building. So there's somewhat of an upsizing of the equipment, but a big portion of the cost is the electrical reworking of the building and the necessary safeguards and relays to protect the grid from any backfeeding. And because of the size of the service at the YMCA, 483 phase, as it was mentioned, after the New Canaan High School's recent LED lighting project and underway solar project, it leaves the YMCA as the biggest single electric consumer in town. So this is a big system, and it's actually two buildings. When you get inside, there's two separate boiler plants and two entirely separate electrical services within the building that we have to reconcile. So there's a lot of it's electronic controls and labor and switchgear to make it all work. Does that answer any of your question?
Okay, any questions for Mark?
Mark, could you explain to me the actual workings of the solar panels that you put in?
Well, not yet. So part of this sort of very thoughtful and ambitious project is energy conservation. And so this is central to this, not just sort of let's go find a generator, but let's also right size it and be thoughtful, especially in the long term, about how we can reduce the building's electrical, thermal, and water conservation needs, so that we're right sizing a piece of equipment that will be its principal asset to provide energy for the next 20 years. baseload energy. So solar is something we are looking at to come, but it doesn't help us at night or in a storm. And even the solar systems that we've installed in this building and at the schools, they actually are what's called net metered. So in the case of a school, for example, that's not open on the weekend, it's generating electricity, it's feeding it back to the grid and it's getting a credit, but it stays grid connected. But because of this scenario with a storm, even these solar systems disconnect when the grid power goes down. The system the YMCA is looking at is upgrading this sort of boiler energy plant so that it stays on, it doesn't go down when the grid goes down.
Okay, but you are installing solar panels.
Solar is something we are looking to implement as complementary to this as a subsequent phase, but not immediately.
What is the total cost of the project?
So a lot of considerations in the project, right? So one of the things is kind of, if you will, sort of cleaning up the circuitry in the building and making the building more efficient. Also, as she mentioned, installing LED lights where there currently are fluorescent lights. So doing everything we can do also with controls to reduce the energy requirement of the building and then right size this generator, if you will, to the building. So the range that we're looking at right now is roughly $1.8 million to $2 million total project cost. The first step is understanding, will the YMCA be engaged with the town to deliver a shelter? Because that informs what we're going to power in a storm, and it sort of upgrades our project cost. And then there's the equipment, there's the engineering, and there's all that sort of circuitry I mentioned. $500,000 is sort of the first tranche in the capital stack. We're hopeful that the Inflation Reduction Act, terrible name, IRA, will actually offer some support for this project, potentially up to 30% of the project cost, given that we believe this equipment qualifies, and then potentially bridge financing for the balance. But unlike just investing in a generator, which is sort of like an insurance policy, if Generac shows up and says, here's a $50,000 generator, it's hard for them to tell you what the payback is, but this has a very definable, measurable payback. Over 100,000, maybe a range of $100,000 to $200,000 a year or more, depending on utility costs. So by doing this infrastructure work, it'll reduce the YMCA's dependence on the grid. It'll technically alleviate some of the grid pressure, if you will, that causes some of the lights to flicker or the generator in this building to kick on in summer months. It'll help to contribute overall environmentally to reduce the YMCA's carbon footprint in emissions, making it a more efficient building, and reduce their operating costs by hopefully a couple $100,000 a year.
So the total price of the project would be about
1.7 to 2 million total.
Okay, so is YMCA paying that, or is that expense?
So the YMCA, so part of that project ranging between $1.8 million and $2 million is an upsize consideration to deliver a shelter, right? And upsizing the equipment. And there's also, they're going to incur a corresponding maintenance increase over the term. They're seeking $500,000 of ARPA funds as co-sponsorship for, so of our up to $2 million capital cost. So this maybe 25%. We're looking to federally for approximately 30%. So, that could be up to 600,000 or more. And the balance potentially to finance short-term, because we can finance a good chunk of this because there is a yield, there is a savings that we can use to pay off the loan.
Okay, but who's gonna finance this? Gonna be the town?
Oh, no, third party. Well,
Third party. Okay,
we are looking at B Corp third party financiers that are interested in helping underwrite clean energy projects like solar or this.
Got it.
Yeah.
And, while we're talking about the shelter, I think for us here, and I think it's important that we just get a sense of history in terms of why we need a shelter, why the YMCA is the best spot for a shelter. what the Y offers that no other building. Just touch on it.
Sure, yeah, Russ Kimes, Emergency Management Director. So we looked around our town inventory of buildings. So to take a step back, why do you need a shelter? In any instance where we were to have a large scale storm, we actually just did last week, we did a 2-day tabletop exercise with all the department heads of town, simulating a Category 3 hurricane, right? And in those sorts of situations, I mean, we saw even with the remnants of the Category 1 hurricane, we become isolated, right? No matter what happens, we will be cut off for some period of days without power. And in a scenario, worst case scenario, where you have flooding in your low-lying areas, or you have potentially trees through houses, people potentially will be displaced, right? And we've typically sent people to hotel rooms, or we're very fortunate in this community. A lot of folks, I hate to say, are smart. They get on a plane and go somewhere else when it's coming. We as a municipality do have an obligation to have this kind of a capability. And actually, we're very fortunate because my predecessor, Jim Cole in particular, acquired a lot of equipment that we have. So we have quite a good number of cots and bedding and all those sorts of things to be able to stand up the shelter. We've just never had the right place. We've always said that Lapham was going to be it, but Lapham, I think, has one shower, maybe, if it even has one. Yeah, it doesn't even have one. So when you look at it, the choices are Saks or the high school, right? And while they have facilities, as we've learned, as unfortunately the world has changed, school security is paramount. Now, in the initial stages of a storm or an incident, yeah, the schools will be closed, towns completely powered down. But as things progress, there's a possibility that individuals will need shelter for 7-14 days where parts of town are coming back online. And if it's the school season, we're going to want to get the students back into school. And those buildings are not designed to isolate two different populations of people and maintain that security. So with the YMCA, you have a top-notch facility that has far superior quantity of showers, bathing facilities. It has family rooms, which obviously the high school does not have those sort of family facilities. It has plenty of parking. It has space for what we would look for a quartermaster office where you keep your supplies. It has sufficient parking. It's ADA compliant. So it pretty much checks all the boxes. It's not in an area of urban flooding. It's elevated. The trees are far enough away from it. We're not worried the trees would fall on it. So it's in an ideal location. And again, I think the other thing that was a big thing was the high school generator. I mean, if you're putting aside the high school just from the security standpoint, the generator that's there now is a life support generator. And I can't speak to the specifics of it, but the amount to power that whole building would be massive. I think the words that I had heard last time when they looked at it over a decade ago was well north of $1 million just in town 100% cost to generate that building. And that doesn't even put aside the fact that now we have to keep that building separate and secure. So from a standpoint, it's a win-win, right? Like I don't want to say ARPA money's free money, but it's a organization that does a tremendous amount for our town. It's a facility that fits the bill perfectly for a shelter and allows us to maintain that school integrity and security. So.
Question for us. Any other questions from Mark or us? All right.
I personally got the shelter at the Y briefly because there was a tornado warning. I was there with my daughter for a good class, and it was, I mean, I felt very secure in the building, because it accept anybody got shelter there for a storm, because there was concern.
And we're very
It's a great
fortunate.
spot. I mean, my daughter was like 3 and she was scared, but it was, I was like, no, it's the safest place to be in, it's the place to work with. And we went down to the basement, it was very orderly, there was, I was like, let's get in the stairwell, we'll be fine. But it felt very secure, as long as we were away from glass windows, the glass doors, but it's a great building. It's a perfect building.
We're fortunate. The YMCA and Margaret has said this in other presentations, has always done this with no contract, right? Like they've done this out of the fact that community spirit and what the YMCA's mission is. We are as part of this actually formalizing it, right? There will be an agreement, there will be terms, and that way both parties are protected and we know it's available to us. So we have that when we commit these funds, so we know that it will be a signed contract. So.
Russ, does the building meet the requirements, the building code requirements for kitchen security?
Yeah, I mean, insofar as there are, when you get into the nuances of emergency shelters, the American Red Cross is one of the groups that has kind of led that space with regards to capacities and things like that. If you go into the specifics, and I think that this is be an evolution of, in particular, ADA with shelters. It's a challenge, but what they have is a tremendous volume of space that allows us to be able to do things. We are working in partnership with with Mark and others to make sure that the things like the elevators will be part of the circuit that is generated and powered during this process. So it will be accessible to individuals. I don't want to get into the nuances of it, but 40 square feet per person. We've done a lot of research. That's the basis for a number of people. And I can say that the nice thing about the Y is we can actually do tiered levels of shelter. So if we need the full capacity, the cubic feet they have in the gymnasium exceeds the amount of equipment we have to run a shelter as a town. But we can step it down to using one of the smaller rooms in the basement and allow the Y themselves to reopen as well and keep their functioning while we would have a much smaller operation going on in one of the other sub rooms. So
I wasn't specifically discussing or raising the issue of capacity as much as I'm concerned about wind forces. The roof for the glass, the facade has been designed to be built. Forces being that it's supposed to purchase.
you know, insofar as engineering studies, I think it's something that, you know, look, as far as I know, it's a commercial building. I'd have to lean to Joe and team to know the specifics. In comparison to our high school and other buildings, it's withstood everything that we've thrown at it thus far. And I don't think we have much other that would be more resilient in town inventory that has the kind of facilities that we need. Now, that said, if the YMCA were to be impaired during an event, obviously we don't lose our equipment. We can put up another facility at another site, Saks or the middle school, if we have to. But this also gives us more depth on our bench of locations to operate out of. Look, the reality is any major instance of an emergency, we could lose any building in town due to a tree fall, flooding, whatever. It's a possibility, right? So you have to have layered planning, and this allows us to have our first stop and go to, which is by far the most preferable of them. You know, we're not going to be putting people in a shelter until after an event. So we're not going to be putting people in there when we have hurricane force winds with glass. People are going to isolate and protect in place until the storm is settled. Obviously, we're not going to be putting people in the pool rooms with floor to ceiling glass. You know, we're talking about the gymnasium, which is entirely enclosed, and there is no windows that I recall when I went in there. So
No, I would just recommend
yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Yeah, I mean, as a town, we're very fortunate because it's EOC, it's a police station.
Correct.
And the YMCA locations. So, I mean, I think we're very, very lucky to have this offer, and YMCA has been very gracious to come forward. I would support
Will far exceed what we have beds for. So if you were talking about the gymnasium, it's north of 100. Yeah, the question was, what was the actual capacity that it could support? It outstrips what we have cots for, to be frank. It was north of 160 just by doing a cubic foot calculation, 40 people per cubic foot, and then even cutting that in half, assuming you have a large number of handicapped or limited mobility individuals, which increases the space they need. We don't have that many cots and beds and pillows, so it far exceeds what we would ever need. I hate to say, when you look at, I spoke with some of our peers, the emergency management director in Norwalk in particular, and asked about Sandy and what their experience was, because they're a much larger municipality and they also have direct coast. During Sandy, the most they had was a 260, I think they said, in that neighborhood in their shelter. We're a much smaller town without direct coast, so I would anticipate that our even worst case scenario needs would be much smaller than that. So I think we're in a very good position in that regard. We've got some work to do on ourselves, which will be coming back emergency management. In the stuff that we have is from Jim Cole, which was a while ago, and I hate to say it, but bedding and mice tend to find each other, and we need to do some improvements there, but this is a good first step.
All right, any other question?
Sure. Motion to approve the American Rescue Plan appropriations, $250,000 for the information and technology cybersecurity, $200,000 for tree planting, roads and parks, $15,000 for the VFW, and $500,000 for the YMCA emergency shelter.
Second. All in favor?
discussion first.
Discussion. Go ahead. Discussion.
I just want to bring up that before we vote, I agree with everything. But we're getting to the bottom of the $6 million ARPA fund.
And, you know, looking over the list, there is a bit, there's nothing for Early House. And I was excited to see the original YMCA request that did include something for, I think it's infant care, but that went away. I do know there's a demand in town for preschool. There's parents that are going outside of town for preschool, they're going to Milton, Darien. So, you know, I know there is a plan, a request from St. Aloysius School as part of their major construction project to add 40 spots of preschool. So they asked for some funding towards that. So I wanted to, and it'll be preschool slots open to everyone in the center of town, perfect location, perfect timing. So I didn't get a chance to ask Kevin earlier, because that came. So I just wanted an update on that. But
Or is that- it's not in there yet. No, it's not a place where it's Kevin still there, because he can.
Kevin is here, maybe I can answer that. It's okay. They have refined their request. There was a lot of back and forth. Plans were finalized and their request now is $150,000. And so we have been talking about it and there will be a further round. As you know, we've been taking these in phases and in rounds. So that will be part of the future request. They have officially made a request, so we will have to consider it one way or the other. So just a matter of timing, probably later in the fall.
And I don't have little kids, but I do know a lot of people that are looking for those 3 and 4-year-old slots and would rather stay right in town.
Yeah, I would add is if you look at what we've approved so far, and this just touches on your point, Maria, we've approved open space, which I think is important for the town. We've touched on nonprofits. We touched on some, emergency shelter and some town needs. And to your point, people have voiced their concern or desire to have early, the preschool type stuff. So I think it's something that should be looked at.
I 100% agree. I think the YMCA is the first location actually presenting. It's absolutely fantastic, better set up. But in terms of, I have 3 kids. Me and my wife both work. We use South Early School, what have you. So in the times, school times, and I think there has been disruption to families left there. So I think it's excellent.
Yeah, I'd like to just add also daycare is actually in town. So we're talking about 3 and 4-year-old spots, great idea, and then also daycare. So we do work, even if they work home, they need to still, we don't have a lot of those types of facilities for people in town. So I also urge that maybe that be something that we could consider for the leftover architecture.
I wasn't 100% sure. This is our first year putting our kids early into school. In South, I'm not sure if that was all in the past, but it's a huge help. So if it was a secondary, so now what have you, I think very well.
I know also that the Regional Center has been looking for funds as well, more for child care. So I think we need to evaluate that.
All right, any other comments? Thanks so much on the floor. The second, look at the second, all in favor? Thank you very much.
Great. And just to finish up the ARPA discussion, Tucker, the latest list, if the public want to see, is that on the town website now? They can probably see that. Thank you.
I'll update you all of it tonight and then we'll put it on the website tomorrow.
Great, thank you. So we've got, questions, where are we? Good to hear that. All right, next item up on the agenda, item number 6, Police Department Building Project. An update and review of the building renovation and construction project, as well as the approval of the following project appropriation and bond authorization. We'll wait to read the authorization. Welcome, Penny.
Thank
How are
you. Thanks for having me.
Chief.
Thank you.
Does that one work? I guess so. Don't touch that.
Says it twice.
We might come up as much as I can, so we're not sure. I can I just say one thing about the technology. We have ordered 2 OWL cameras, which is systems that the Board of Education uses, which will go to each speaker and highlight so that when you're speaking, they'll actually see you as well as hear you now.
I don't know if we'll want
I
that.
have to.
As you'll see, there's a box in the garbage here because we had to add battery backup at 4 o'clock this afternoon. We're not sure what's.
That's what we wait. Thank you very much. All right, so now in front of you, you have a handout here, so we follow along and discussion. Thank you, have the floor.
Okay, so pinch-hitting for Bill Walbert tonight, who is not available, and we've come basically to ask for the remainder of the funds that we need to design the police building project that was previously sent to the committee and Brian Humes. And so we've been given $300,000 in seed money. This exhibit that you have shows that our estimate for our cost to take us to next summer is 1.5 million. And so we'd like you all to authorize the additional 1.2 million and allow it to be funded as you all and the Board of Finance determine. So we can go over the different items. Some of these are estimates. Some of them have already been negotiated. The biggest portion of it is architect fees, and those have been set. So what we'll do, the one thing I did want to point out to you, I think it's noted at the bottom, because we don't know what they are. We have not included any funds for moving the police station temporarily, so that we may have to come back depending upon the timing of that. Or we'll come back once the building is designed. We'll come back, mid 2023 to ask you for the remainder of the funds for the full project.
Yeah, let's get the numbers. And
Right.
all this back. And obviously, this is the seed money that will give us the answers to the many questions we have, including what's it gonna look like, what's it gonna cost, all that stuff will be to us. So this is the first of the conversation. So
Right. Then we'll be designing it in accordance with what was presented.
anybody have questions for Penny while we have her, or
Or for Mike, who's on the committee.
yeah, Mike is sitting through these meetings too, so you can add anything.
What are the owners representative fees at this stage?
Well, basically, on all projects of this size in New Canaan, we've had an owner's rep. So what the owner's rep does during pre-construction is helps make certain that we have a full project, runs the budget for us, helps negotiate and find a construction manager. We'll be hiring a, Weston O'Neill engineer to do the little bit of abatement work and design that we have to do. We need to do a geotechnical engineer. So the owner's rep, just as they did on the Saks project and the high school project, helps with the negotiation of the contract, helps with just moving the contract through smoothly. Because, we do a fair number of projects. I've done about 4 big projects in New Canaan, but it's not like being an owner's rep where you do these projects all the time. Owner's reps also are, I've found, incredibly helpful in a project. At some point, you hit a sticky wicket, no matter how carefully you plan. And what the owner's rep does for you at that point is steps in and basically gets a good solution for all the parties involved and keeps the project moving along.
Who's the owner's rep?
We're putting out a request for qualifications to a few people, and we'll be selecting one shortly.
So basically you have the cost estimators being a separate consultant. So the owner's rep doesn't do that.
No, the owner's rep doesn't do cost estimating. That's a separate skill set.
I'm just.
So the owner's rep would work with the cost estimator, make sure they understood the project.
Having financed multiple construction projects over 25 years. Various capacities, and I spoke to Mike about this. He was able to dive into a lot more details than I know. This is just a broad spectrum of the construction documents, 675. Could you just speak a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, the way that we've done these projects is first you get your schematics, sort of detailing, and then they do a different design development level. Then construction documents are your detailed books. They're what you keep at the end of the project. I mean, the set for the Saks project, was 2 books about that thing. So it's all the electrical, all the mechanical, structural, you
A
know,
lot of that's digital now, though. Those books were 10 years ago, you might still have them, but a lot of them.
I think it's digital now, but I mean, it's whether they do this digital or we also have their old fashioned, the one the paper. And we'll do whatever the construction manager wants, it's gonna be doing it. It'll be those construction documents.
To be clear, the cost for that is not so much the digitization or the, you're saying it's.
It's coming up with the design. It's, where, this is where you're gonna need, I mean, in addition to Brian, he's gonna have an electrical engineer, mechanical engineer, we're gonna have to be designing, it's police building, so there are a lot of very specialty items.
I wasn't questioning, I was
Right.
just saying it's a large number for the budget, and I just wanted to get some additional detail on record to say that this is. not
Oh, yeah, well, and
allocated. Yeah, so it wasn't a question like, hey, I don't think this number was appropriated, it's going on record saying like, and all the detail that has to go into it, especially since it's as a station. Certain requirements that are needed to have it function as such.
Right, and it's an excellent question, and basically, you do the first phase of the design to make sure that you've met the needs requirements of everybody who's gonna be using the building. Because when it's at the schematic phase, it doesn't cost you anything to, move a line here or there, change a wall by 5 feet. But once you've started to get into the construction documents where you're saying, all right, this is where the plumbing line is gonna go, this is where the electrical line is gonna go.
So that's.
That's what, all
So
that's
exactly
all
what
the
you just
detail.
said is some of the most important parts of construction.
Exactly.
Is that, so the line item seems large, you're like, wait, it's just documents, but that's the whole project. Well, everything has to be mapped out perfectly, for the end result is.
Exactly, yeah.
Great.
Penny, since you've done so many projects, how does this compare, like that looks like a big number. But how does it compare to Saks and the high school, even though it was so long ago? I'm like, this is just prep work. How did?
Oh, no, I think these are completely in line,
Yeah.
with what, architects and the rest of the fees, what you pay for a project. I mean, I think the estimate, when it was presented to you by Brian Humes for the full project was 2.5 million to 28.5 million. So, having basically 1.5 million to get you to the next stage is completely in line, with the
Similar to,
project.
like,
Yeah.
Saks. Is the overall estimated cost for the project 20 million? What is?
Well, I think the last presentation, it was like, it's basically in the 26 to 28 million dollar range. And that's without, just so you all know, I'm not trying to, that's without anything for a range.
Or temporary facilities.
No, I think the temporary facilities are included in the 26 to 28, but we just haven't included those in the 1.5. I mean, you heard from earlier this evening that the school is going to be staying in their offices through the end of June. So, it just could be, if there's some timing where it makes sense for us to come back, and say early on, fund this little project, we're gonna need the police so we can start construction promptly. We'll do that, but we don't know that we need to do that yet. So we have not asked for any of those funds.
Question, Diana?
Yeah, I have a question about the lawyer's fees. We have lawyers on retainer for the town, is there a reason that we want to pay extra for attorney's fees? Is it our attorneys that are charging us, or is it a different set of attorneys? That you just talk a little bit about that.
Well, I wasn't actually involved. I think we used the same lawyers that we've used before for the town for the review of the architect's agreement. My understanding is that those are additional fees to the retainer agreement.
Retainer amount is basically, I haven't seen, but it'll basically general questions and advising and consulting the town on various municipal matters, but something of this nature, specialists, even if it's the same law firm, but they don't charge you a completely different.
Right, so I mean, we've been using Double Monte, who also worked on the Saks project, just to review things from the town side, and he's always been very efficient. Thank you.
I just have a question. I actually think that's a great question in terms of these are big numbers, and I'm no expert in construction. I think I will
readily admit that. And I'm sure you guys are going through the right process of getting the right experts, but just curious if, is there like some sort of benchmark or, you know, some other example from another, like similar project where we're looking at, these fees seem to be right, these seem to be in line with other similar projects. Is there any type of thought to that or benchmarking that we're doing? I believe we did benchmark that when we were talking with Brian about it. Typically, it's a percentage of the project. I was trying to think. So at one point, didn't want to do the mental math because I hadn't done it ahead of time. But if it's a $26 million project and it's $1.5 million, 27 was the round numbers, and it's 1.5 million in that's a little bit less than, more like 5-6%. So I think it's very much in line with, I'm trying to remember, I think it's around that percentage for the architect's fees in the SAC project. So similar projects we've done on, right. It's below, yeah.
All right. Just keep wanting to get rid of that. We have to hear it. So do you feel like you're being represented well in the whole process there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thrilled that we're at this point where we're about to launch and move it forward. It's been a decade or more of talk and back and forth and lots of time and angst, I think, everybody. So I think all the officers in our department who serve this town really well are really appreciative of what everybody's committed to doing. And the building committee's been incredible. They've been doing great work for us and supportive. And we're going to get a facility that's going to last us another 40 years. So it's money well spent, and we're thrilled. Yes.
We're looking for more.
Well, I don't want to over 140. We'll see. I don't think it's going to last 140 years. I think that's an exaggeration. So, welcome.
One of the comments you made about the new temporary facility where Locust was partnered, you guys looked at that a little closer. Are you going to be okay with it?
We did. It's going to be challenging. I mean, to be realistic about it. The parking situation there is just a little tenuous. We'll figure it out. We'll move things around. We'll placate some angry people, but we'll figure it out. It's a temporary facility that'll work for us temporarily. It's not a home we want to live in, but we're glad to reside there temporarily.
One of the things I didn't ask Ross, though, if there is an emergency, like you city, will that building handle that?
There's multiple conference rooms there. Yeah, we could set that up temporarily, and we'll figure it all out for sure.
I have two questions. Is the separation of church and state in terms of EMS in your building included in the budget of the 26 million? And is it included in the fees that are requested now?
I believe that's in other budgets. It's being accounted for. It's not within this budget. So I believe the last part of it is heating. And I think that's in progress, that there's been estimates for that to get corrected so that it'll be wholly independent of our building.
But in doing the construction documents and doing all the groundwork, you need to separate those and just design them all. So is that included in this set, or you hire a different architect to deal with those?
No, Brian is fully familiar with what is being shared with the EMS building. And we're actually talking about having a representative EMS here help or be a part of the building committee or at least consult to make certain that we're meeting all their demands.
Okay, but the cost to do the design work to separate the services, is that included in what the architects engineers?
Clarification, there's only one service that I'm aware of that's shared, which is heat. And that's being taken care of through another budget, not this budget, not this.
I think it's fair to say that in the 26 to 28 million, we can figure that one out on this project. And we need to figure that out as we get involved into the details of this form. So we will know exactly what's, we'll work with police, we'll work with EMS to understand. And there should not be a separate budget. I mean, if it's already been funded separately by these town bodies, that's fine, but otherwise, I think any additional work that would have to be done, we would want to coordinate with this project.
Okay.
I think Joe's listening. If I'm wrong, Joe, you step right in. But,
Hello, it's Joe Zagorowski. Yes, there is two other projects that are in play and have been funded as capital projects that Bill Osman is handling. One being the separation of the heating system, which is in the works, and the other being a generator, which is also funded and in the works. Everything else that is kind of commingled on the site will be addressed under the budget. It's been contemplated.
Thanks, Joe. And thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. I know you're full day up there. All right, any other questions?
Yes, one more. The housing that's in the rear of the property of this department, if that was to be relocated hypothetically, would that accommodate the parking needs that you are short of?
No, I think we're talking about two distinct issues. The short parking issue is 39 Locust will be temporarily at.
Okay.
So that's not an issue with the existing site.
Okay, so the addition that's taking place in the back is not gonna cut you short of parking.
No, it's not. It'll be adequate.
but we've spent a lot of time on parking spaces and
Yes.
schematic phase. And we actually think that the police department has a pretty good handle on it.
Mhm.
Great.
All in favor?
Need a motion.
Motion first, but I have to recognize Paul Foley was here tonight too. Paul, you had a lot of work involved and this probably dates back to when you were on the council. So I appreciate all the
We're
work.
talking about this for quite a while.
Oh, yeah.
So when I'm asked in town, well, what do you were starting at 15, 16, now you're at 26. What happened? Well, 10 years, 15 years happened. The library happened, other things happened. This building happened. So a lot of things happened, which is why it's not original. Well, whatever point in time you want.
Keep raising interest rates.
Well, a year ago we could borrow 1 3/8, now it's 3 and change, so that's cost us. I just want to put a lot of time into the effort then, so that, nothing went rushed. So.
I'm going to comment quickly that, Chief talked about talking and angst. That's in our sweet spot, so don't blame all this too much on us, because that ain't gonna change. We're getting there now.
All right, so we need a motion. Mike, can you make a motion?
Yes.
You have to read the resolution.
Yep.
Make the motion to approve the resolution authorizing an appropriation of $1.2 million to the police station study 2022 project and the financing of said appropriation by the issuance of general obligation bonds of the town and notes in anticipation of such bonds in amount not to exceed 1.2 million.
Second. All right, second. Discussion. All right, all in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's gonna be great fun.
All right, next item on the agenda is number 7, the town council rules.
Yes.
Group change to town council rules. Tucker's.
Yep, there's really nothing to this other than this is just reflection of the extension. There was previously this act had a deadline to it, but it's been extended now indefinitely. So for remote meetings relates to that piece of it. So it does, you saw the red line version is just change some of the deadline dates and make it indefinite.
I did not see the red line version because of the problem with the iPad.
But that I did send to you all. I scanned it with the red lines and many of you said that you received that. Yeah, I emailed it out directly.
Yep.
Yeah,
From Wednesday, yesterday, today.
no, I emailed it a week ago,
A week ago.
more than a week ago. When you were all having troubles, and apparently what IT tells me is there's some viewing,
I got it.
you got it, okay.
So just, to review, basically all it is an extension of what we already have in there for.
Allow remote participation, right,
And then right now it's indefinite.
yes.
So. Okay, Bull Rider, let's go. What do you got?
I actually would like to add something to this, and I don't know if I do it before or after. a vote, because this is a pretty straightforward vote. But we need to have a discussion about the rules.
Yeah, so why don't we vote this and then, because
That's right.
that'll change the rules always this complicated. All right, so let's talk about this.
So I want a motion that we approve these red line changes.
The second,
Discussion.
the second, Bob, the second, okay, now it's.
My understanding is that the rules are revised or updated by town council. And with all due respect to Tucker, I think that we as the town council to look at it and see if there's something that's before we approve it, because it also has some the secretary and the chairman.
Yeah, so this is, what we're doing is we're just amending that one portion that allows the remote meeting to take place. We could make a motion tonight to add to our agenda a full, complete rewrite of all of our rules.
Why don't we do it all at once?
Well, it's just, this is just easier because we know that we need to do this. We may enter a topic tonight where we want to think about it or whatever. So we have to, well, it's our rules.
It's a timing issue because this rule went into effect July 1, so we need to reflect this in your rules.
Let's not comment, let's vote on this first.
And then we'll.
Agreed, Penny.
So there's a motion on the floor. So all in favor of the red line version, raise your hand. Opposed? Okay, good. That's unanimous. Okay, now.
Start by the chairman?
No, it gets signed by the secretary.
Okay.
Okay, now,
Okay, so.
we can abolish every rule we have.
To you guys, and we have had on the table always any suggestions that council members would like to put forward. And I have asked multiple times over the years for suggestions, could have incorporated it. So suggestion going forward is to have a discussion about, now that the state law has indicated that we can have remote hybrid meetings, I think we need to have some serious discussion about whether or not two things. One is how often someone can participate remotely. And the second question is, can you take a vote virtually, or must you be in person physically? The federal government have to be in person physically, and the state government you have to be present physically in order to vote. We are elected officials, and I believe that our citizenry expects us to be in person. So I think everybody needs to think about that and offer their comments at our next meeting. I'd like not to just kind of put something on the table.
Yeah, so what you're proposing is twofold. One, how often someone can participate remotely. So like somebody could decide that, you know, hey, I've been elected for a 4-year term. My intention is that I'm never going to come to an actual meeting. I'm going to participate remotely for 4 years.
Right.
Just technically, yes, you can do that.
I don't see how you can override the state stuff.
The state statute says clearly for in-person meetings that you must provide members of the board, commission, committee, subcommittee, or team the opportunity to participate remotely. You must provide it,
Right.
not necessarily the public, but any member.
But it falls short of actually saying,
No, it says vote as well. Participate includes the vote, yeah.
where does it say vote?
I've got 3 different documents here that Nick Lamonte sent me, so let me find it for you.
Any vote taken at any for any kind of sharp statement by roll call.
Unanimous, right?
So then it is, and, yeah. It's a lot of-
Like your effort, though.
I mean, it's up to us to encourage participation in person. And that's what this is all about. And I think we're much better now when we're all working together. And I think, that's why we added on to this building, that's why we look this. Yes, like we did, so it's seats will be here, so that's good. Yeah.
Does remote mean by phone or Zoom?
Electronic means,
Any,
electronic means.
So in other words, we cannot.
You can
put a
suggest,
number of-
you can encourage that everybody attend in person when all possible, but the reason that we've been skewing more towards having hybrid meetings is because it does get a little bit tricky if you all agree that it's going to be an in-person meeting and we notice it as an in-person meeting. If one of you at the last minute were to become sick or have, be late, you have to be offered the opportunity to participate. So by setting it up as a hybrid meeting, you're covered there, whatever the scenario is.
Also, you don't want to force somebody to come to a meeting if they're not feeling well. That's true. You want to give them the opportunity to stay that track.
Well, also, I mean, I'm just thinking in terms of the future, all of us are able-bodied now and able to make it. That might not be true forever for all of us, and it might not be true for somebody who's in the future. We should make sure that we don't limit who could run and who could sit here, and it could be somebody that has a disability or is not able to. And we want everyone to be able to participate fully in our government and run for an office and not preclude them from doing so because they can't physically get there. So I think we have to think. I mean, I obviously will make I prefer to be here in person too. I love seeing all of you in person. I think I participated once remotely and I'm so happy I had that opportunity because I could participate when I was on vacation. Probably my kids. I love you guys, but I think that's a nice option, but I do prefer personally being here with all of you. I think that is it's preferable, but I wouldn't want to preclude somebody in the future from being able to run or serve if they can't physically make.
no, I just think I get stuck on the voting issue. If you're, if I have a work, at the Yankee game, not listening, but it's time to vote, and I just click in and say, yeah or nay. I struggle with that. On those type of items. Yeah, totally, I'm with you, Hillary. You can't be here, you're sick, or life is what it puts in front of you. You can't be here, that's totally fine, but.
Yeah, given this discussion.
Well, this now, or we're gonna do this next week?
Yeah,
I'm telling you to go anybody else, I just,
it's also a moment stuff.
that's all. Saying, like, back both of you guys are saying, are we having a larger discussion now about it, or? Between.
Well,
Could we elaborate on the state rule and put forward reasons why we could participate remotely? Can you elaborate and say it should be illness or infirmity, or like you can't be at a Yankee game and participate remotely and intend to vote? Or work, or out of the country, or out of town, or something. I mean, that's something we should all consider in looking at the rule. If we can't circumvent the rule, can we elaborate on it? Give reasons why you couldn't participate. I think the state rules kind of supersede.
The rule says the opportunity to participate and vote. But couldn't we put, like, to Hillary's point, parameters on it, like if you haven't been part of a certain amount of the discussion, hopping on to vote, maybe not prefer. I mean, you can't dial back, this is part of the pandemic, now we all can do things differently. So that's not gonna go away, but can we put parameters, and maybe that's something for the attorney, can we put parameters on, the eligibility to vote if you're just participating for 5 seconds or something?
Yeah, so the town council rules about attendance. Annual attendance is you can't miss more than 2 meetings or 3 meetings. Okay, so 3 meetings. Okay, so 3 regular meetings is really the cutoff point where, if you miss 3 regular meetings during the year out of 12, or actually out of 11 most years, that was considered the trigger to say, okay, we need something to do. This has obviously, this group has been very good about participating again here. It's just, we're talking about setting it for the future, so.
See, these are elected officials, you cannot remove somebody. The state can do it, you can't.
Whether they intended or not.
According to the charter, you can.
Well, maybe the charter, but I think that the state statute should precede it.
Yeah, but, okay, well, that's not something. Okay. That, the policing of this is, you know, the nice thing is these rules get written every couple of years, and I don't see this group having an issue. Everybody seems like they want to come, they want to participate, everybody's anxious to, you know, come and participate. So I don't know, we need to spend a lot of time.
Steve, I would just like to, if we were to consider adding anything to the bylaws, maybe conduct and presentation online, what may be required as a standard. I don't know if it sounds at all town-wide, but it is something that corporations institute because they want to make it as professional and diplomatic as possible, right? Just as if you're here. So maybe that's something we can look at.
I think about that. No shorts over there.
That's, that's Tucker, a quick question. Tucker, are we talking about the state sort of temporarily extending COVID-related rules, or are they putting a marker down and say, this is always the way we want it to be?
I mean, it's an approved bill, Public Act 22-3, so it goes
So-
away, and there's no sunset on it.
Okay. So do you think it was intended to be permanent? Okay.
It's not.
Well, these new owl cameras, they really want to be there first. That's all right, so there's not, I mean, obviously there's nothing we can do. This is the way of the future. This is what's going to be. So, well, we did 2022.
That's other, I'm not sure if this goes in the rules, but we were talking about the criteria for assessments and capital expenditures when we talked about it. Did that go here or is that a different?
They can reside.
Okay, so I would like to present something, or I don't know, again, I'm not sure how to do this, but to suggest a process for assessing.
Which should happen pretty quickly.
Yeah. So is the proper thing for me to like email?
I would email a template
A
to,
template?
it probably should come out of general government. That would be the best stuff.
Okay, you're mentioning that, okay, so.
And then general government will present to the rest of the council.
Okay. Okay, I'll figure that out.
Good, speak.
Steve, can I ask you, can you issue a list with everybody who's in each subcommittee? Because in the list I provided, it's just the chair and co-chair.
No,
or
I-
co-chair.
Someone.
We have that, and it's online, and I'll send it all to you tomorrow.
Okay.
The Board of Finance just revised some of theirs, filling the budget's vacancy, so I'll send you their current, I have both on the same thing.
Thank you.
All right, segue to committee reports. If we're okay with the rules, anyway, okay with the rules?
I think we have to abide by the state. But if anybody has any suggestions about inclusion or deletion or rewriting, rewording, anything in the rules, I have to work.
Good job. Thank you. All right, committee reports, bylaws and ordinances. I know you're working on, trying to get a meeting set.
I think it makes it, so October 5th, I've got most people signed up for, but I just, while you're here, I'll ask Maria and Christina, if October 5th would be a good day.
For what?
For, but, no.
Yeah.
Okay, great. That's when our joint meeting with the Conservation Commission will
Yes, thank you. Oh, I just said yes. You gotta read my mind, so they.
be. Okay,
Whichever one is when, the time.
well, now that we have a date, well, I'll work that out.
On Zoom or in person?
I'm laughing because we just had this discussion generally. We should probably, I'd like to do it hybrid if we can, you know.
I think that's a good recommendation to do the hybrid. You just don't know what happens at the last minute. If something hasn't been noted, if you do it in person, you can't change the noticing within 24 hours, so.
My only hesitancy about that is that, you know, that most of these, you're looking at the back of people's heads and, you know, it really works a lot better if you're live in person, but I don't want to exclude people who.
Right, so ask everybody to attend in person, but there's an extenuating circumstance,
Right.
you've got that.
the purpose of that meeting is. Well, I call it a workshop. I just think there's some very. So now that we're talking about this, the concept is the Conservation Commission has been tracking some consideration of gas powered leak blower regulation in Greenwich. And has come up with a suggestion for a new ordinance to restrict the use of hours, by hours, days, how many pieces of equipment can be used, you know, when you could phase to electric. I mean, there are a lot of, it's a huge, complex subject that affects many people in town. And I just thought I'd like to have one meeting where we're all together and we just say, like, what is it we want to bite off and chew here? You know, for instance, there was somebody, I don't know if it was Kimberly, but somebody sent some a link to a process in. No, it was in Massachusetts. Maybe, but no, the one I'm thinking of is Southampton.
Oh.
And the lawyer for the town was commenting on the process. And she said, we've actually decided that regulating this by ordinance is sort of like hitting the thing with a heavy club, a blunt instrument. And she said, we think we can make more progress by educating and persuading. So, I mean, that's. What?
Southampton had so many. That's not a town.
Well, anyway, somebody said that, I'll send you the link, but that just intrigued me that we really ought to, before we start on this, we say, you know, how do we have to, do we need input from a constituency in town? So far, we only have a couple of people who have really spoken out in town, and actually the ones that appeared at the first committee hearing that we had both said, don't change anything. You know, so we don't really have a body like when we were talking about plastic bag ordinances. You know, we had a lot of work that was done by nonprofits to analyze that and compare it with the rest of the world and what made sense. And we had other nearby towns that had already enacted things. So it was a more mature kind of process. Right now, we really don't have any of that. So I just want to get people's sense of, you know, for instance, do we, you know, is a survey important? You know, do we need input from town? And, you know, one of the comments to that is, well, we have plenty of input from other towns to survey their members, but is that good enough for anything? So I just want input from people as to how to approach all those things. Because it's a big deal. It will be very controversial if we want to open the door. Yeah. Okay. Education, Tom and Rita. Well, real quick, there was.
Yeah, there's several things to talk about.
Well, refreshingly, there was a Board of Ed meeting the other night, and all they talked about was professional development of teachers, and it took the entire time, and there were no controversies, and it was educational and very helpful, you know. But we're obviously, what people are thinking about a lot has to do with DEI, and on that, it's that's been pretty controversial and well publicized. I just have to comment that the people like Tom O'Day, who stood up and said, you know, it's fraught with problems if we just say we want something like diversity. And I've been thinking about that and heard from other people, and I think that before you just define what you mean by diversity, it's almost silly just to have it as a goal. And I think that implicitly that's pretty much where the Board of Ed came out, and I have a lot of respect for that. It takes a lot of backbone to face the public and say, I'm not ready to put a rule in about diversity. And I think that's basically what they've said, and that doesn't foreclose it. And there are a lot of salutary things that they have determined to do, but I'm just saying that the level of angst, you know, in the press and everywhere about this issue, because they're buzzwords and they're very controversial.
But and actually, I think
Please.
become controversial because one of the people have applied to those words.
And so I do think that, I guess what I.
Can you clarify that? Because that sounds very ominous, and I really think we need
If we
to.
look at the definition of what's the.
No, the people who have applied, said people have applied, and maybe what people are you talking about?
People have applied, and so various people have applied. So in fact, I think there's a misunderstanding of this word. So I think that's what I meant. Because various people have applied meaning to something that there are clear definitions for. And so I think part of it is people don't understand what those words might mean or should mean. That's
I don't
the
think
issue.
there is a definition of what they mean, so I don't think there is, you could look it up many different places, so I really think that that's kind of going out of the lane of DOE representative to town council. I don't think this is our purview. We're supposed to be focused on different issues, so I think that that's a discussion for more that I don't feel comfortable having in here.
That's fair that you said that. I think that what I guess had concern over is because these were goals that were established by a previous board that people were very comfortable with. And then they were taken back because of controversy that I think was introduced that may or may not have been fair of that. So I think what the board did was try to get beyond the controversy, which I think was constructive. I do think there's work to do, and I do think there needs to be a bit more understanding about what a DEI program could be. One way or another, I think there needs to be more understanding. And I think that's what the board decided, that there needs to be more understanding. So that's one thing. But I do think that some of the controversy might have been overdone.
Well, we have to be careful because, we are not for that. When we had that very passionate discussion on school start times for several years, one resounding note that was constantly thrown at me in particular was, we need to stay in our lane. We cannot dictate policy. So I think it's inappropriate if that's what the standard is for us to opine in any form about Board of Education policy. Okay, as a member of town council or as a liaison, you have to be very careful because either we stay in our lane or we do not. And if we're choosing to do not stay in our lane, or to not stay in our lane, then that opens this up to a much broader discussion on this panel, and we all have, well thought out different opinions on a lot of stuff, but we as a body, using the school start time model, that will stay out of it. Dr. Lutzy has determined it needs to happen, it's happening. We should not, one way or the other, tell them what to do. So on DEI stuff, if it's our policy now to put our noses in it, then, and if that's our collective judgment, then we should all state that now, or we should not be a part of it as the town council as a body. But we all need to be mindful of that. And I have to say something with the liaisons, all of us, and all of our different departments. We as liaisons, when we are interfacing, we represent the entire town council. So we must be careful about how we interact and engage with the community and department heads when we are out in the public. We all have the right to say what we want to say. I get that, okay, in our individual capacity. And we represent the town, right? The entire town we represent. It's in our rules, okay? But we need to be mindful how we engage with all of the public. We are entrusted with the public confidence. We can disagree on positions with each other passionately, and that's fine. That's what, we can do that. But let's be careful about how, in fact, we as elected people, with the confidence of the public, how we actually engage with them and speak with them and speak to them. Saying as a general matter, I mean, I respect everybody on this panel, I really do, and even if I don't agree with your positions, doesn't mean I don't like you, doesn't mean there's something wrong here. I'm just saying, let's just be all mindful about how we're interacting on both sides and on both sides.
Mike, I agree, since I was the one that said we had to stay in our lane.
The only problem is if a letter goes out by an RTC, you are a representative of town council, you've already spoken. So I have a problem with that.
I didn't say that one time, I didn't get that.
Well, if something goes out, if you represent the RTC, a letter goes out on this topic, and you're a town council member, or on anybody, you're not staying in your lane, so it pertains to you. Who represents the RTC?
Yeah.
Well, if you're an RTC member, correct?
Okay, but there are
There are
members of other
BTC
members.
I understand. Well, I understand that. Just, I agree with Mike. I'm just saying, if something goes out, you're already making a statement by being on that committee.
No,
You don't think so?
no, because I have nothing to do. And I haven't spoken out in public, unlike some of the members.
I have not. I'm just saying, then we have to stay in our lane and represent it. So I'm in
We
agreement
have-
with Mike.
I think
I'm
we
in agreement with
represent
Mike.
everyone, whether you're Republican or Democrat,
I
whether they
agree.
voted
I
for
just
you or
agree.
not.
I agree.
But some of the tone by people.
We're not talking about tone. I just want to be very clear. I'm just saying, if we want to stay in our lane, I agree with, yeah. I just think that to be careful across. the
Mark, you
board.
said stay in your lane was your comment.
Correct, and that's what I'm agreeing with.
So you're agreeing with yourself.
So, wait a minute, Mark, are you implying,
I'm agreeing. Just,
what are you implying with the RTC and town council? I don't get it, like, I really don't understand, I mean, I don't get it.
I'm not gonna, we can move on.
All right, guys, we're in committee reports, so.
Yeah.
That was.
I don't know how we got here.
But I do think that we need a code of conduct, so we're all
We're
under
moving
the understanding. The letters together, when you're a liaison or a representative, can be misconstrued and misunderstood as being the opinion of the town council.
Right, and there's numerous examples of people not staying in the lane, so we have to. Making comments.
It's like, no, I mean, clear though, are you saying that someone could not have a personal opinion and also be on town council? Or you're saying that by giving a personal opinion, you are risking representing the opinion of?
No,
I'm really just trying to clarify.
No, I'm using the example, and it's happened before, in regards to, let's say, Tom's letter to the editor. It was not appropriate for a liaison representing the Board of Education to go and write a letter to them. Because it voids your position of just being representatives of the town council in communicating to us in the council what the direction for what was discussed. You became part of the Board of Ed's discussion or opinion set. That's a mistake.
But is that, but if you introduce yourselves as a citizen of the community, this is the decision I'm taking. And then to just yourself.
At the beginning of your
Is
statement.
that a decision that is coming before this, maybe, are we deciding, we're not deciding? That's not a decision that we are making. We are not deciding whether or not the CBI is going to, that's not a decision that's coming before the town council. I mean, we can approve a budget for the school, but we're not deciding that. So I guess I don't get that connection. Because that's not something that we're deciding upon.
Okay, we can take the discussion on
Yeah.
that.
I don't see that, I just don't see that connection.
It's one thing to report on doing with the Board of Ed, but when we as a town council and we on any issue that we are any department, so I'm planning on those decisions.
Okay, so that
So like with the
I can
police
understand that.
department, if they're telling,
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm starting to give my opinion on whether there should be a female locker, it's still like, hey, Mike, check it out, like, I don't want to hear you. Just tell me what to do.
So Mike, I understand that. I understand where you're actually, and I do agree with what you said, and I did have an opinion and I expressed it, and during the report, I actually understand your point completely. I don't necessarily understand the point that you're making in terms of expressing an opinion on something that that's not coming before us. So
I mean, I think it's
I think
misleading
it's
to do
different.
that, and misleading to think, some people may think that's the opinion of town council. Unless the comment starts with, this is my private opinion, I am member of the town council, it does not reflect that. I mean, if people just read it and they know who people are, and then it's a very controversial topic, and I don't think that we as town council people should be calling for other people to resign from positions in the town. We all wear many hats. Some people are head of nonprofits, some people are on the RTC. People have all different memberships in the town. People have private businesses.
I'm not.
So my point is we as town council people shouldn't try to dictate or take a position of our personal opinion that could reflect the entire town council.
Again, this is not something that's coming before the town council, so I don't see the connection. Again, I agree with what you had said, Mike, and I will reserve my opinion when providing a report. Well taken. I hear you. And I'm fine with that. And I agree with everything you said, Mike. In terms of expressing an opinion on something that's not coming before the town council, I disagree. I think that's where I stand.
Yeah, providing, I think, in the history of presentation of town, especially like planning and zoning or full packed rooms here, when anybody that's been on town council for the last, most part, like 40 years, when they get up on that little mic like that, and they're weighing in on a topic at a public meeting, they introduce themselves as, "Good evening, my name is Penn Young, I live on Indian Water Lane, blah, blah, blah. I am here on my own. I am not here as a town council member. And I'd like to weigh in on the subject." And it's crucial that that separation occurs and occurs early and often, because we're elected to represent 20,000 people, not 5,000, not 8,000. So when we put our hand on the Bible, we're representing everybody. Not just a faction or a group. We have to look out for everybody. So that's been sort of the historic nature of what this board has been. So when you're out there in the public and you're weighing in on something personally, a personal opinion, it is really important that you as an individual separate yourself from the role you're playing here and the elected role serving, representing those 20,000. So that's just.
Great point, Steve.
Do we move on? There are other points, but in terms of.
We could.
No, not on this subject, but there were just a couple other updates from
Keep
the
going.
DOE.
We digress seriously.
Is it? The only other thing I wanted to give an update with planetarium, because that's something that the town, that we have decided on, that we decided we were going to invest in, and we probably should have an update on that. The committee for raising money for the planetarium is going full speed ahead. The price for the planetarium due to prevailing wage increases has gone up, so we all know. The amount that the town is treating is the same, but instead of $750, is now $850,000. That's the estimation for completion. They have raised about $100,000, and in addition to the $350 that we had donated from the town. And they're hoping to raise 90% of what is needed by December 31st in order to start and be done with construction by the spring. So there's an update on that here. No opinion.
All right, next, finance and government, Mark and Marie. We're good. Health and Human Services, Kim and Patty.
Well, since the first elected tends to do a good deal of the reporting, so what's going on, I thought it was really rather refreshing to have Jen do a written report. Because you kind of get bogged down with all the percentages of this and how many had and so forth and so on. So it is important to you at all to know how many people were vaccinated. Go read the report. So it's all right there. She's got all the, the latest vaccine, the bivalent COVID-19 boosters and such, up to date on, as you would anticipate from Jen, on what's going on in that domain. I thought the brochure, on the card here about the services that are available with Silver Hill really highlighted how organized this effort is, and It's nice to hear that, 22 people, participated in the program. From a family's standpoint, there are a couple of new families that are participating in delivery of services through the Human Services Department. And one of them is one of their efforts is developing some parenting skills workshops, which we're hearing more and more. That it's kind of good to have that help available. And then, as you know, this is domestic violence.
There's a nice article, we advertised online for that, Jen. All the vaccinations, all of it's going
I
on.
think they're back in the,
They are.
Yeah.
Signs getting done in a couple weeks.
And they're going to be back.
They're now.
That's.
Right.
Yeah.
Get my apologies.
Right, good segue to infrastructure utilities from Christine.
No.
It's land use and rec, there's a lot of.
Conservation Commission first. This bullet points, the commission voted to approve the Camp Hutchins pollinator pathway meadow in Bristow Bird Sanctuary. It's an area Bristow designated for the meadow, and both will be next to the meadow with a plaque in the right Hutchins. Fundraising for the meadow will be done through Friends of Bristow, and due to the current drought, the planting will begin in spring. So it won't happen this fall. Boardwalk work is completed in Bristow. The Bristow Pavilion is planned to install in February, right where the river crossing is. The commission is looking to put up a bird line. And September 8th, 2024 is the centennial celebration for Bristow. Park Public Works is looking to send a patio at Mead Park Pavilion where there's currently fresh stone. Basically, it's our stones. Proposed flexi path around Mead Park is put on hold while they're waiting for a survey. The stone area for the pickleball courts looking to put in bluestone patio in front of the pickle courts, and they're also putting in a new parking lot there. There'll be lines that'll be slightly larger than the current parking lot. There were 4,669 pool passes sold this year, which is up 4%. John Howe, his report said that future capital expenses for the pool to purchase backup pumps. Issue right now is if any of the pumps fail during the summer, they might have to close the pool because they would not be able to source backup pumps. Also, the concrete slabs are around 20 years old, which is their lifespan, and they're in good shape. They're to be replaced soon. One is the concession stand when they close. We're trying to find vendors for next year. Caffeine and carburetor to be at Waveney Park on October 23rd. As Kevin said, the new lights were installed at the stadium. The Parks Department is down by 2 staff members, and the doors for Waveney have been delivered. They arrived, but they're waiting for some weddings to be over. It's going to take some time to install them.
Question on and I think you said it, but I'm not sure if I heard it, but the area where the equipment is, the exercise equipment. I'm seeing a ton of kids playing.
No,
Didn't
so-
mention that, but
No, so it was Mead Park,
okay.
right by Apple Park Pavilion. They're looking to extend it.
You know, what I'm saying, I didn't know if you had mentioned it or not, but at Waveney, that area that we're updating and upgrading and also including that playground. I'm a little concerned because I've had all these meetings saying it's dangerous, kids are on it, we need to update that equipment. Every time I go to Waveney, there's a bunch of kids on that equipment. And I'm just waiting for an accident to happen. Should we be putting, I don't know.
We have
tape
some
around it or something?
started to shut it down.
Okay, so that was just a concern of mine because I don't want to be, we don't want anything to happen.
I actually work out there, like if it's a really nice day, instead of going to the Y, which I actually love the Y. I'll go there and, when we had this discussion, I guess, months ago, I thought it was a great idea to have a kids area to kind of bifurcate the two, so the adults. There is always kids there, every single time I go, and the equipment now is broken, so like they're on the whatever machine, one of the legs is missing, one of this, and then like the parents just sit there on the board or whatever, and the kids are just like that machine's broken, and you're gonna pinch your finger, like. It is a hazard now, and like, listen, I still really appreciate having it, you have to work out outside, especially it's nice out, but to see the kids, I'm not saying they're breaking equipment, my concern is always like. I'm not watching a kid, it is on, or she's on.
I would suggest calling Tiger.
Yes, I probably could be about Tiger. So to be honest, I had talked about it.
It's Tiger's working on it. He's just said. it's
Oh,
awesome.
awesome. No, thank you.
It was brought up at a meeting with him here.
And I don't mean
But
to,
now it's further broken.
it's just a question. I don't wanna, I didn't know if I had heard you say it or not. That's all.
No,
It wasn't discussed. That's all.
Can I ask a quick question on Parks? I think it's a joint question, the Parks and Rec Board of Ed. I'm getting a lot of questions from parents about the after-school programs that used to be run through the rec department. And I understand we have the Right in School Now program, which was implemented with the change in start times. And I think your kids are taking advantage of the early right in school. But there are a significant number of parents that have reached out to me asking about the rec program. And I think part of that is staffing, that there isn't with I'm forgetting his name, Bill. Yeah, retiring, that perhaps it's just a matter, I don't know if it's something that your subcommittee can pursue with them about if they're gonna hire somebody that can maybe get that program going again, if there's interest or gain interest. I just know that there's interest in the community with the various programs that the rec.
Well, I think that'd be something to bring up.
Okay.
The parks, the rec department.
Okay.
They would know.
Okay.
I know at the last UF meeting, they were talking about a special fund, so you could, not for the people within the rec department, but
Self-sustaining.
self-sustaining,
They could
increase the program, so you put more programs without having to contact for special appropriations. But that would be a question for you, that's under Parks and Rec.
Got it. Okay, thank you. That's all.
All right, public safety. Peter, Mike. Heard from the TV. Yeah.
Community building, you heard about, so the upcoming follow on with the fire. Not much going on, they were able to contain the grass fires because there's no water and everything. As long as possibly do, they did a great job around town, I'm sure there are no real issues. Rescue truck is on the road, so that's like several $100,000 running on maintaining, it continues to be bid out. The Wayden suicide incident, so our firemen did respond to that to help out until the closure plans and consider over. Counseling services were provided, not with advantage of it, so I think that's a good thing. And then finally, happy to report that apparently the bylaw on volunteers incentivize them to join as board group. So we have 7 volunteers now fully on board since I think in July. They're all became residents. So the fire department's very happy and it's a great incentive for the town hall. So all this fun.
So that comes together. All right, library project. Mark and I have been on these weekly calls with the library. Obviously, you can see come out of the ground, glass going in, stone going on. They're actually finishing the some of the interior stuff. Actually, all the HVAC stuff is going in, so it's moving along. And there were 88 people on site working during 1 week period. That's an army of guys. Yeah. They can move along and see come out of the ground, so I'll get that.
I will say that the public opinion, at least to me, is remarkable and unbelievable, the amount of people that are there and what's actually happening at the pace that it's happening, especially in today's current day, getting people to show up to work. I personally am like blown away every time I drive to town. I'm like, wow, like, this is a massive project, and it's like a beehive, there's tons of people, so everyone's super excited about it. It's great.
Yeah, if you look at the glass that's there, if you look really closely, there was some talk about when they designed that glass, it's a special bird strike glass, so the birds can actually see the glass with a little design etching inside the glass.
We're seeing birds.
It's a
Yeah, fine.
All right, a little plug, Robin has, put together with the planning team, organization, really fun event on Thursday night, it's 29th. So I want to give her a shout out, to the Historic Society and raising money for planning Canaan. And you didn't mention it, but the swap shop, some of the stuff going on over there, in terms of renovation, really is.
Well, there's Saturday, maybe, if anyone wants to come and learn here, you're more than welcome to come.
Want to know what Steve's signature drink is? That's
Yeah, so I'm expecting to see some of you there. I can pour beer or wine. That's it. That's for a big squirrel.
Robin, can you send the invite out for these numbers? Yeah, sure, it's on our, website, planningcambridge.org.
All right, anything else anybody wants to add? It is 9:33. Hold on. All right, motion to adjourn. All right,
Second.
all in favor? All right, get that second.
Second.
Second, we're leaving the iPads